You guys, welcome to a live version of the Legal Tea. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Legal Tea, I use things that are going on in real life to break down and explain complicated legal matters. And last week, I told you guys about my dad who called me about a story, and I should have reached out to him to see if he wanted to jump on this live, but I didn't think about it until like just now. But because my dad has an awesome way of telling stories. But anyway, this is the story. He calls me and he says, Ebony, because he calls me Ebony. Listen, I was, I go down to Louisville and I get my suits tailored by one of my homeboys. And a couple months ago, I realized that he got this new equipment and he was doing some embroidering and creating different products. And I noticed that a lot of them had the school logo and stuff on it. I've been looking for him for the last couple of weeks and he was missing. And he says, turns out he was in jail. And I said, yeah, for copyright infringement. He's like, how did you know? Well, I guess I should have known you would know. That's why I called you. So long story short, his friend got some equipment and he started making different merchandise that had the school's logo. He's in Louisville, so you got University of Louisville there, and he was just making merchandise. And somebody came into the store, made an order for like 5 items, and he fulfilled that order. They came back and ordered made a larger request. And he fulfilled that order, and when they came to pick it up, instead of giving him money, they gave him handcuffs. They locked him up. The feds locked him up. So when it comes to copyright infringement, that copyright's just in general, thing you should know is that it's federal enacted. So if you have any type of issues criminally running in, you're going to be looking at feds in fed time, which is, how can I say it? Fed time is a lot stricter than state time. I used to do criminal law. I did both federal criminal and state criminal. And I can tell you that if you were sentenced on the fed level for any amount of time, you're going to do about 80% of that time. Versus on the state, chances are you aren't. So I don't know what type of criminal history, if he has any, because they do look into that, whether or not you have criminal history to decide whether or not you're going to do actual jail time. They're going to look to see if you have criminal history. They're going to look and see how much infringement that you actually do, so that they catch him in the beginning of it, what was his intent. And one thing you should know is that when it comes to things like that, it doesn't matter whether or not you made any money from it. He can have been giving it away, and he still would have been facing a federal criminal charge. So let's talk about that. So in this thing, so it's either copyright or trademark infringement. I'm thinking, in either way it goes, it's based off of counterfeit. So I'm thinking trademark, if it was in fact dealing with the logos and merchandise that he was creating, that's going to be, it can be both, depending on whether or not he used the word. So if he just used the trade name, which now that I'm thinking about University of Louisville, that wouldn't be a trademark. It would be the logo. I'm just trying to think about whether it's trademark or copyright. So the logo can be protected by copyright if it is an original work. And I think that University of Louisville has a bird as a logo. And so that can be a trademark and a copyright. So that's why I always tell people, when you have the chance to protect your work by both trademark and copyrights, do it. So now you have trademark infringement and copyright infringement, right? And they're both centered around counterfeit. So what a counterfeit is passing off a good as someone else's. And that's the same thing and that's exactly what trademarks protect. So for those of you guys that are new, trademarks protect brand identifiers. And those are those things that help people readily identify the source of a good or a service. When people see these logos, this apparel, they're assuming that it's coming from the school or that it's school approved. Because when it comes to that, even though the school, that's the thing, the school doesn't print t-shirts and jerseys, right? They license out their intellectual property to allow someone else to do it. But they get to choose who that company is. They get to choose who that manufacturer is. They get to choose. So when someone sees that logo, they're assuming that it's somebody that's backed by the school, because the school has a reputation to maintain. And when you have these counterfeits, that is, especially when they're poorly done, and I'm not saying that that this guy had poorly done counterfeit. I'm just saying a lot of times when you have knockoffs, like I remember when I used to work at the apartment complex, there used to be this guy that would come around with nadas. They were supposed to be Pradas, but they would have like spelling, it would be misspelled and things of that nature because they were knockoffs. You can see the hem, the thread line wasn't straight because they were knockoffs, So things of that nature. Quality is really an issue. So while you have trademark infringement and you can sue civilly for trademark infringement, there can also be another element, which is criminal. And I wanted to talk about what some of those were. So again, we talked about counterfeits, and then you also have pirated goods. So whenever you put a DVD in, which I don't know if anybody does DVDs anymore, but you'll see this huge counterfeit copyright notice, right, saying this movie is protected by copyrights, and this is the penalty for infringing on this copyright and pirating these goods, and how many jobs, the thing says how many jobs were created because of the movie and things of that nature. So counterfeit and pirated goods, if you do either one of those things, you could be criminally liable. And a lot of people say, well, why would they worry about me? It's just me. I'm just a little guy. I'm not doing any harm. I'm not making that much money from it. They're making so much money from it. But that is not the standard, or even what they look at when they're trying to decide whether or not they're going to bring a criminal suit. Because at the end of the day, you are stealing from someone else. You're taking money intended for them, and it's going into your pocket if you're charging. Sometimes you're not even charging, but you're still taking money out of their pocket. And then if you're doing counterfeit, your argument would be, well, you know what? The people I sell to weren't going to buy that anyway because they couldn't afford it. I'm just giving them another option. Well, that's not your option to give, especially when you're talking about copyrights. But what copyrights do is they give the owner certain rights of exclusion. And one of those rights of exclusion is they have the right to exclude other people from distributing their copyrighted material. And that's whether or not that they pay for it, you're charging for that, or not. The person that owns the copyright has the right to exclude other people from distributing their copyrighted material. They also have the right, so maybe you say, well, I'm not giving it to anyone, I'm just displaying it. I'm just letting people watch it, Now we're talking about, music and movies. And because one of my first cases, when I was doing federal criminal work, I remember going to see a case, and there was this guy who was being sentenced for copyright infringement. We had this huge flea market there, and he got busted. I think his locker got busted, and he had all of this counterfeit material. And it was clothing, it was like movies, it was a whole lot of stuff, right? So, again, they have a right to say where it's distributed, where it's published. They have all these different rights. One of the things that I was going to tell you, what they look at is how many times has this happened? So he made the first sale, right? And then they came back for a second sale. I wonder what the outcome would have been if he would have said, you know what, no, I don't have anything, I can't help you. If he would have did that, it would have looked better in his favor if he would have said, no, I can't help you. I saw that in the comments, someone said something about the stores having the ability, like certain stores having the ability to decide whether or not they're going to sell the merchandise. And if I understand that correctly, they were saying that the stores have the right to choose whether or not they're going to accept the counterfeit, well, I'm not going to say counterfeit, like the material, the licensed material. And each store does have the right, but if that store is found to be, let's say for instance, the store never actually makes any counterfeit material, right? But they knowingly sell counterfeit material, then they're just as liable as the people who make the material. And someone in the comments in the Facebook group said that someone in her family owned a building where they were doing counterfeit stuff, and he ended up going to jail too, because he owned the building and he should know what's going on inside of his building. So when it comes to counterfeit, and when it comes to trademarks and copyrights, it's not just something that you just sweep under the rug. It's not just something that, some people say that's a big box problem. That's for the big boys. That's for the big companies. But it's not. That's something that you should know and understand at every level. Even when you're first starting out, that's why I say it's important for you at least to be aware of it. Be aware of it, right? And one of the things that I do, I like to come on and make these videos. I actually written a book that just came out yesterday. The Legal Basics Handbook is available for sale on Amazon. and it's also available as part of the Launch Legally Blueprint. So if you take the blueprint, which is our Black Friday special, if you take the blueprint, you're going to learn not only how to do your business plan, but you're going to get the Legal Basics Handbook. This is going to talk about that, and it also comes with some material that covers trademarks and copyrights, because you have to know the basics. You have to know what a trademark is, what infringement looks like, what a copyright is, that you can't right-click on the internet just because it's there and put those pictures on your website. You have to know things like that when you're in business to avoid these type of things. Like as a business owner, you have to know that it's not okay to take things that people bring you and say, hey, will you make this for me? You have to know things like that. I have a lot of people that are on my timeline who make things like mugs and t-shirts and bags, which is all great. But when you start putting copyrighted, protected material on those products, then you run into problems. But you don't know it, or you don't care because you think you're the little guy and no one's going to pay you any attention. Well, you never know who's watching. Let me tell y'all this, especially when your main platform selling is social media, especially when it's Facebook, which I like to call Fedbook, because the feds are watching. Do you know how many criminal clients that I have when I get the discovery? It's just Facebook page after Facebook page printout. Do you know? Because they are watching. That's why when you're selling this type of merchandise, when you're selling food out of your house without the right licenses, like people are watching things like that. Just because you are a small person or a small business owner does not give you a right to go around the laws. Like the laws still apply to you. That's what I have to say about that. So whether you're a small guy, whether you're David or Goliath, the big guy or small guy, you want to, or I should say rather, you have the right to enforce your intellectual property rights. I know a lot of people, especially small business owners, they always say, why is this big company picking on me? It's not that they're picking on you, but if you don't protect your rights, you will lose them. And a lot of these companies spend a lot of money to ensure that they have a brand that's recognizable in the community and in the market. They spend a lot of money, they spend a lot of time and a lot of effort. And so it's not that they're picking on you, it's that they're enforcing their rights. The same thing that I recommend that you do as a small business owner is enforce your rights. Don't just let things slide. All right? Well, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, keep building your brand and owning your genius.